so that we can, when we get back, we can look at finished flying logos and we can move to character stuff, okay? I'm going to say that this is my scene that I want to see the output from. And I've done a lot of various previews of it. I've probably generated quick previews from here, over here. Start capture, just to make sure I like all the timing. I won't do that all now, but you get the idea. We will stop that. I have looked around at various scenes to see where all the problems are. I have pulled render regions often to make sure what I'm looking at is what I want to see at that point. So let's go to a further point. And I want to now get this stuff out. Remember this, 3D programs do not make movies, they make frames. They make big sequences of frames. So when we have our whole project set up, there's a directory in it that's called Render Pictures. Render Pictures is where all our stuff will end up by default. We can change that around, but to do that we have to know where all these other things are, okay? So let me talk you through it a little bit, and I even have some things rendered already so we'll know the other part of it. I like the output I'm getting here. This is what I want to see. I've switched myself over from model or wherever else I am to the render toolbar. Now this toolbar has things in it that are related to shaders in general, texturing, and then rendering, which is all down here. And this is kind of a curious path. Once we're here, we go to the render area under the render button to the render manager. And this is going to bring up a pretty scary property panel, this, which attempts to have all of our render, actually it doesn't look, well, it's looking scarier now, yes. This attempts to have all of our rendering stuff in one place. Now, in general, if you ignored all of it and you just hit render, something would happen. It might not be something good, but something would happen. This program has gone back and forth with making rendering very easy and then making it hard again and making it easy and making it hard again. The drawback with making it easy is that there's so many different ways people want to render and so many things people want to do that you don't satisfy all of them. The drawback with making it hard is that it literally becomes almost impossible to do. They are right now at a, we're not even going to make the system work unless you know enough about what's going on here to get your stuff out of it. So you have to have enough understanding of your file paths, which all of you do now, which is good, and a few other issues to get stuff out of the program. You can access all of it from here. The reason they put this render manager there is because really to do this, it involves 3 or 4 different property panels, a pass panel, an options panel, a renderer panel, and this just puts those all together. Now, first off, we'll start with output. This is what it's going to name each frame, and this is the renderer it's going to use. We have a few other choices there. The scene render option is by default Mental Ray. In this case, I picked Mental Ray purposefully because I know I'm using Mental Ray. There's some other reasons why I might be doing the other ones. In general, you can leave that at Mental Ray or scene options. This is very important. This is the files that it's going to write out. If I click on this and then I click edit, I can modify the format. Okay, here's a big reason why you want to do that. Maybe one of the greatest flaws in their rendering paths right now is that they default to this format called soft-image PIC, which nothing reads. Strange enough, even most of their own software doesn't read it. I generally will use TIFF because it's a format that opens in almost everything. It opens in Photoshop, it opens in, heck, it probably opens in MS Paint. It's really one of these very old file formats that's been around a long time. Another format that actually I might even try for this is something called OpenEXR. OpenEXR has the advantage of it was written by Industrial Light and Magic as an open source format, and any high-end thing generally takes it. We'll go with TIFF for right now because OpenEXR might create problems, so we'll stick with TIFF. RGBA means we're going to put out the full color channels and an alpha channel. A great thing about 3D is that you get perfect alpha channels. And 8 bits is per pixel, so this is a 24-bit image. You actually could do 16-bit and, strangely enough, float TIFFs, though I didn't know such a thing existed. Again, you can leave that where it is. This is also telling me where it's going to write it to. Now, I'm on our Z drive, which is our shared drive, right? And this is my project. That's that directory render pictures, and this is how it's going to write that out. It's telling me that directly. It's going to write default pass main, the number, and okay, I'm all happy with that. Now, timeline. What do I want to actually render? In this case, I do want to render the timeline from 1 to 900. I can render a smaller amount if I want. If just to see it render, I'll do a range from like 200 to 210, just so we can see a small section of this go. Skip rendered is very important. One of the reasons we like rendering image sequences is that it might take 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour a frame to render. That's very possible. If it crashes and I'm rendering a movie file, I lose everything. You don't come back from that. If I'm rendering an MOV file and I'm 3/4 of the way through and I crash, that MOV file is garbage. If I'm rendering image files, every image file before the one I rendered is fine. So since renders crash a lot, if I turn on that skipped rendered frame option, if my system crashes and I want to restart again, all I have to do is reload the scene and start, and it will go right up to the last frame that was ready. So in general, you should have that on. Pass camera. This is the camera I really want to see. Now I put in a special camera here called camera 1, which is this one down here. You'll see me jump around to it. So I want to make sure that says the camera I want to put in there, camera 1. I can also click this inspect camera, which will open the dialog, and I can make sure it's at the right settings, HDTV 720. I'm happy with all that other stuff. Okay. What else about here? I'm going to turn on motion blur. Motion blur means that when the camera moves, it will blur the image slightly, the way a real camera would. It will increase my rendering time. It will probably make things look more realistic. You might have to play around with it. I'm going to close this for a second, and I'm going to do something you should do while you're doing this. I'm going to save. I'm going to do a save as. The reason I'm going to do a save as, if there's any things I change there, I want to make sure I have them. I've used up to 18 of these. This is going to be logo render 4 with motion blur final 19. This is the 19th version of this I've saved, ready to render. And I'm going to close this dialog here because it takes a little bit too long. Now, if all of this is working right, I can get a quick preview before I render. It's not quick, but I have a button here. When I click this button, it's going to attempt to render one frame with those settings. Now, the reason to do this is to make sure that I'm really happy with everything. I can even let it go for a little while and see the whole thing, or I can bail out earlier. But if there's something in here I don't like, I can go back down to render, render, render manager, and I can modify those settings. And then when I re-render this preview, I should see the difference. A good thing about this is that this preview is going to show me all of the settings set up the way they're supposed to be for this output. So rather than that little preview window I pull, that preview window I pull can have other settings in it. This is supposed to be how things are really going to happen. A couple things about this while I'm here. I'm going to show you a couple renderer options. There's a lot in there. There are people who make their entire living just working in Mental Ray, just defining these options. One thing is I'm using something called the rasterizer. I'm going to flip back to ray tracing just to see the difference. When I do it, this will change and that will start to render again. And it will look a little bit different. I'm hoping. If it doesn't, I might jump to a different frame because sometimes this takes a little bit to get. As a matter of fact, there we go. Good, and you'll see it's actually showing me the old one. Now this is showing me these new settings that I've changed from there. And you'll see, I can even judge, is it a little bit faster? Is it a little bit slower? Does it look as good? I'm okay with it. I will stick with it for the time being. Oh, I went to ray tracing, damn. I'm going to go to scan line. Okay, and that, you saw that changed quicker. Also going to turn off unified sampling. Good. That's a lot quicker. That's so much quicker, I'm going to stick with that. Although you notice it's choking a little bit more over here, but that happens. Optimizations are things purposefully to make your rendering faster. Tile size. This is actually something that in general can make a big performance increase, especially if you have systems that have a lot of RAM on them like we do. Each of those little squares is called a tile.